Maybe that's why I haven't listened. Actually, I'll do that.
In frame. All right. Let's make sure we're all in frame this time.
All right.
All right. Take two.
Take two.
Hello, everyone. This is another I Am That episode, chapter 75. It's chapter 75. In peace and silence, you grow. Obviously, once again, we have my homie, my best friend Alex, the one who bought me this book initially, got me into I Am That series. Um, as you might know from before, he was in I think it was like chapter 67. So if you like this, if this is your first time seeing this and you like him, want to see more of him, go back to chapter 67, subscribe to his channel, all that happy jazz. All right. So I think I'll say, as we were saying in take one, I mean, I kind of glad that we got rid of it because I was half in frame, and plus we were kind of being a little long winded. Anyways, I think the big thing with it from like I would say, well, the first 2/3 or so, first 2/3 of this was really
It's Maharaj being very patient with him and sort of like entertaining his questions and walking along this little verbal journey of like the difference between the inner and the outer guru, basically.
yes, yeah, they go into that whole spiel of the inner guru versus the outer guru and how to find because he's more focused on finding the outer guru. He even says at some point like oh, I don't care about the inner guru. Um, I just want I just want to do whatever gets me there, which of course Maharaj explains like the inner guru is the path.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole point. Like, and he's trying to be very patient with them. It's very typical of how he treats a lot of these questioners and whatnot. He has to be just very patient in the beginning with them in that regard. For me, like I said, the what gets really interesting. Oh, we might have to hear some dogs barking. What really gets interesting is yeah, because like the title, "In Peace and Silence You Grow." That's very typical of like most Buddhist and Hindu traditions, like meditation, being in silence, being in peace. Because the question, what makes us grow? Maharaj, silence is the main factor. In peace and silence you grow.
I remember another like quote from him is he said something like somebody said like how do I get progress quickly or how do I get maturity quickly? And he would say you would gain maturity quickly if you stayed put
Yeah,
in your nothingness.
I think that wasn't that many chapters ago. I think that might have been a few or so chapters
Yeah,
ago.
it's the same sort of idea.
Yeah,
He's saying like those periods of time where you're silent and you're alone, and most people view those as very pointless sort of times. But those are the times where your inner being is growing as you're spending time just contemplating yourself and contemplating reality by yourself. It's extremely important for people to be able to be alone and have that alone time for that reason.
exactly, exactly. Oh, this is another part, another point, a question I did like too. When you said, when the question, who gives the ultimate into initiation? And I like how Maharaj's response is, it is self-given. Like ultimately, you ultimately know. You ultimately know that, like, and that's I think what he means by like the supreme, or not supreme, ultimate initiation. That's like, it's when you know that you know. And
Yeah,
that's how else could it be given ultimately but yourself.
because
Who
the self is what we're trying to discover. The self
exactly.
is what we're trying to experience, and it's of course it's only going to come from yourself. That's kind of like a letdown for this guy because he kind of wants there to be some sort of exterior outer self
Yep.
or exterior outer initiation that can somehow confirm like, oh, it comes back to me. Well, that's gonna
Yeah,
boring or like that's not what I was expecting or that's not what I wanted to hear pretty much.
exactly. And like I say for me, it's actually I would say yeah, like it's more than even 3/4. Now I think about it. It's like pretty much for me. The it's like the last couple pages is that where it was getting really like really interesting. Where he talks about how what was it that yeah the link between the Atma and the Sattva and how and because the questioner asks what is the link between the Atma, Sattva, and between the self and the universal harmony. Maharaj, as between the sun and its rays, harmony and beauty, understanding and affection are all expressions of reality. It is reality in action, the impact of the spirit on matter. Tamas obscures, Rajas distorts, Sattvas harmonize. With maturing of the Sattva, all desires and fears come to an end. The real being is reflected in the mind undistorted. Matter is redeemed, spirit revealed. The two are seen as one. They're, they were always one. The imperfect mind saw them as two. Perfection of the mind is the human task for matter and spirit meet in the mind. I just loved this. Like to me, that was a very powerful. Like just first of all, I like the metaphor. Very simple metaphor. He's talking about for this very deep complex, which is like the complex issue, which is something just that Maharaj is very good at all the time. You know what I mean? I feel like that's like he's like the king of metaphors. I always
He
keep saying
is.
this.
Yeah.
He's really the king of metaphors. And I like that how he makes that distinction between like the reason why you're seeing these things as two different things is ultimately because your mind is being imperfect. It's not pure. It's it's there's obstruction there.
Uh-huh.
You're obstructing yourself. And the other part I would say like the found really deep is that at the end how the questioner he asks, I am very much afraid of taking intellectual understanding for realization. I may talk of truth without knowing it, and may know it without a single word said. I understand these conversations are going to be published. What will be their effect on the reader? Maharaj, in the attentive and thoughtful reader, they will ripen and bring out flowers and fruits based on truth, if fully tested, have their own power. I like that. He's just like, if they know what's up, they're going to see this and they're going to and test it and they're going to see the results of my words because my words are true.
And that's all Maharaj ever offered was um, the scientific method, if you want to call it that,
Yeah,
or like he was just saying, test it, test my words. This is the process that I follow. This is the process my guru taught. Similar anyway, but this is my, I'm
exactly.
now teaching you. This is what I did, and this is the result. So, hopefully, anybody watching this will also follow Maharaj's example and stay put in your nothingness.
Exactly. Seriously, get this book if you have not gotten this book already. I think actually earlier he did say something about like didn't they mention spiritual books earlier too?
Yeah, what is the value of spiritual books?
Yeah, he asked like he straight up like asked I forget like he was this value of spiritual books and Maharaj is like at the beginning at the start like they're good for helping kind of initiate get things going but after a while they could be a hindrance and you just gotta know when to ditch it. But I think with something like this, it's less so like a guy. It's more like you get to see the conversation, so you get to see a flow and the sort of back and forth. That's I think very different than just hearing like or just seeing like reading some lecture from a guy just going on about some stuff.
Yeah, that's way more interesting than a lecture.
Yeah, and that's why I love this format. When I saw it was conversations, I was like, oh, this is really cool, and I've been loving it ever since. I know, but
But yeah, it's very typical of Maharaj. Just sort of the first part, he's sort of walking through these concepts with him, and then he eventually just sort of breaks them all down and says, this is the way it is. These are all concepts you're trying to impose on reality. And reality doesn't play that way. Reality is a fact. Your concepts are just floating bullshit in your mind.
exactly. It's all complete nonsense, all complete just yeah. And like I said, like it's a really good chapter. It's not like if you haven't been reading well, if you haven't been reading this book, get the book. But if you haven't been watching these videos, I suggest start from the beginning, watch them along, especially if this is your first time. And yeah, I think that's. But for this chapter, for this episode, I mean, is there anything else
No,
you have to add? Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a very good chapter. It, there's a few couple really, I mean, all of it's really interesting, but I think there's a couple points that kind of really stand out, especially it's kind of meta, it's bringing up like spiritual books and talking about like the impact of, what people, us, what we will think of them. So I thought that's just, those are the kind of the points that stood out to me. Other than that, pretty good, just solid. I am that chapter. Wouldn't you agree?
good chapter.
Yeah. So as always, as always. So I think with all that said, um, once again, I'd like to thank my friend Alex for joining me, and hopefully, like I say, I want to get him to join me in more of these episodes, maybe get some other folks as well, and yeah, just keep doing these. And once we're done with this book, do other books, do other media, other things. Just the sky's the limit. Just the whole spiritual world. Let's explore it all together. So, namaste,
Namaste.
peace,
Peace out.
and Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
You all have a good one. All right.